our elders.
I'm Dorothy Hendrickson, and I've been a lifelong member of Nordland. That means for 90 years. And I've been involved with most aspects of the church, except for the 4 years I was gone in Minneapolis. But I guess what I want to talk about is music. I think other people have spoken about other things. The first thing I remember about music at Nordland was the men's choir. They had a very good men's choir. And I was just a little kid, but I was impressed by them. And then later on, they had, after Reverend Knudsen came, there was some kind of a choir, because I remember his wife singing in the choir. But it's just kind of vague to me. But after Reverend Knudsen left, Reverend Dalla came, and then he started the choir. And it was kind of a young people's choir. In fact, very young. I was about 12 or 13 when I first sang in it. And we weren't even confirmed yet when we started. And then we had some older people, like Herbert Jacobson and Henry Sunday. They weren't old. They were probably in their middle 20s. But Reverend Dalla directed that. And the only music we had was we sang from the old Concordia hymnal. And then in the early 40s, we had some interns that came for the summer from Augsburg College from Minneapolis, and they led the choir when they were here. And it was fun because we had choir in the summer, which we didn't usually have. And they introduced us to something more choral music that was on music sheets, not just in the hymnal anymore. And well, then the war came, so I went away to school, and I don't really know. I'm sure they had the choir practicing while I was gone. Those that were left, we weren't all gone, but some of the men left, of course. The men went to the service, to the Army and the Navy, and some of us went away to school. So when we came back then, Reverend Larson was in charge. And then I believe, if my memory is correct, Donald Jacobson started directing. And Donald directed for a long, long time. And then one of our other directors, even Janet Thompson, Mrs. Bud Thompson, directed for a short period of time. And then, let's see, who came next? Well, meanwhile, Clarice Anderson, Mrs. Ivan, was just innovative. I think about all the things that she did for our church. She started a junior choir, and they had gowns. They had white gowns with big red bows at the neck. And the boys wore, just their ordinary shirts, but they had red bow ties too. And my mother, Mrs. Dewey Peterson, Bernice Peterson, was the accompanist on that one. And Clarice also started Our Ladies Quartet. There was 4 of us that started on that. I think it was Clarice and myself and Mana, Mrs. Lester Martinson, and Louise Martinson. But then over the years, we kind of evolved. Finally, we became, we started as a quartet, and then we started as a triple trio, I think. We kept adding people. And we had some pretty elementary music. I'm not good at reading notes very well, but Clarice was real patient with us, and we sang in church, and we sang, I think, a few other places, maybe at Bible camp, but the choir was the main thing. And we also had, let's see, besides Donald, we had Viv Wright later, Viv Wright and Bob Martinson and Alan Anderson, and lately now we've had Luke and Laura. And there may have been others in between, I'm trying to think. But choir was always a highlight for me. We practiced every Wednesday night, and it was so fun. And Audrey Audrey Stool and my good friend, and we were kind of silly. I think about us married women, we sat and laughed and laughed and laughed. And we just had good senses of humor, and we did laugh a lot.
During choir practice?
Yeah, well, in between. And every Christmas we went caroling. And to begin with, we caroled in the Paynesville area and in the New London area. And I think Herbert Jacobson would lead us, and we'd just drive across country and go into people's house and sing for them. And I don't know if we were I think they enjoyed us coming, but we came in with our wet feet and walked into their rooms, and we had I think we made kind of a mess sometimes, but they seemed to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And then we'd get in the car, and if we were in the Paynesville area, we'd go over to the New London area. Later on, I don't think we did that as much. They just went fewer places. Maybe there weren't as many old people later on. Maybe.
Did you go to nursing homes?
Well, to begin with, there weren't nursing homes. Coronas Manor just was built, I think, in about 1965. Mm-hmm. And before that, there weren't nursing homes.
Right.
So we just went to individual homes. Mm-hmm. But after the Cronus Manor was built, we did go there every Christmas. And it's only been a few years ago now that they, I don't know exactly, there weren't enough people to go or what, but there has not been caroling recently. Mm-hmm. And I guess we've always had a lot of music in Nordland. We had a men's quartet besides our ladies' organization, a lot of soloists, and I think Nordland has been blessed with music.
Yes.
And right now, at this present time, we do not have a choir director, and that is something I pray about, that we would get someone to revive our choir, because I really miss not having the choir at services.
Yes.
And I guess that's all I have to say about choir. Let's see, what else should I talk about? Well, I could talk about Vacation Bible School. Mm-hmm. When I was a first grader, we had Vacation Bible School for a month.
Wow.
We had it for a month, and then later on it got to be 2 weeks, I think. And my sister and I went to the District 20 in Meeker County to begin with, but then there weren't many Lutherans that came there, so we transferred and went over to District 24, and there was more people there. And I think District 24 and District 19 kind of shared a teacher. We would have school in the forenoon, and then she would go in the afternoon, she would go to 19. And then the next day she would teach in 19 and then come back to 24 in the afternoon. And we had a lot of memory work. I remember memorizing a Bible verse for each letter of the alphabet.
Oh.
A, B, C, D.
Oh.
Ask and it shall be given you, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. B was, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. But I don't remember it anymore. A C was cast all your anxiety upon me. But it was a good form of, and we had some missionaries that taught us, so I know that they read us a lot of missionary stories. I always remember about Adoniram Judson and the haystack prayer meeting. They were kind of heavy for kids. And the teacher usually stayed in a home in the congregation. And after I was married, we had several students that I boarded and fed and housed and washed their clothes, and some of them, the men, I guess I remember washing some shirts and stuff. But now, I guess, then they went up to church and had Vacation Bible School. And I think for a while, they hired some students from the cities. Those were the ones that I housed at my house. And then later on, just the parents or the teacher, I remember being superintendent of the Vacation Bible School at church. But then we had them for a whole day. And the kids had an hour off at noon, and they all played ball. They had to play ball, and we had a lot of Bible quizzes. That's what I would do after noon hour was over. We'd have a Bible quiz. And now, I don't know, now they have about a couple hours, a couple nights a week. So it has really changed.
It's changed a lot.
Really changed. And in Sunday school, as a very young child, I did not attend regularly. I know I did not. I think that the roads were bad, cars were old, and didn't always get there. But then my mother started playing for the Sunday school, and I think I was more regular in attendance then. And then I know we only had the Bible history book and the catechism. I don't remember, well, when we were really little, we got the little picture cards with Moses and all that. But later on, I don't remember anything like the stuff they have now, so much artwork and everything, you know. And so no wonder we memorized the catechism. I mean, we had it from the time we were by, I think my book, my catechism has 1934.
Oh.
So I was about 8 or 9 years old when I started, and we studied that all the way through, you know, confirmation classes.
Yeah.
And our confirmation classes were held in the nice weather. We met up in the church sacristy. Sacristy was a little bit bigger than it is now. They have built cabinets in there, so there isn't much room.
Yeah.
But we used to meet in there, and we were 17. We had 4 boys and 13 girls in our confirmation class. When the weather got colder, there was no heat. The church was not heated except for the weekend, for the services. So during the week, during the cold weather, we met in people's homes on Saturdays. We always met on Saturdays, and it was kind of fun. We got to know what the different women were going to serve. And we said, oh, I know, she has angel food cake. But that was kind of fun to go to different people's homes. And then, of course, confirmation was quite serious. The first time that we took communion was at Confirmation Sunday, where we all knelt around the altar. And that was kind of serious business. But then, kind of after confirmation, we didn't have anything. We did not have any youth league or anything like that. So when we were through with confirmation, we were through with that. Now they have activities for kids until they graduate from high school, I believe.
Did you feel like you couldn't take communion, or what was the serious part about it?
Well, the serious part of it was just that we were kind of dedicating our lives, you know, to God, and the sad part about our church was I don't know when it came about, but there was something about communion. You had to examine yourself to see if you were worthy to take it. Well, of course, nobody is worthy. So that there was very few people that took communion when I was little. Mm-hmm. There was the deacons, and there'd be maybe 3 or 4 members of the congregation that felt that were able to take communion. But if some of the rest of us took communion, they'd say, "Oh, look at her, she took communion." And that was so sad that we had that interpretation of the Bible. So when I went down to the cities, then all my friends took communion, and I was shocked, because it had just been drilled into us that you had to be worthy. and nobody is worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is
Then
worthy.
Nobody would take
And so that was, and I don't know where it started, but it was there. It was in place by the time I was born. That you had to examine yourself. And
I wonder when that changed.
well,
thinking.
it changed when Reverend Olson came. When Reverend Olson came, then I think people started. More people started taking communion, and then little by little it evolved. Now everyone does. So that was one of the things that I regret from our church, my childhood and my church, that was a misinterpretation, and that we took communion at confirmation, and then I did not take communion again until I was probably married. So there was a whole time there when you're a youth, when you really
Right.
need it the most.
Did he clarify that in his sermons, or how did that come across?
It was just there, just something you do. No, I don't remember anybody speaking about it, but it was just a given.
Mm-hmm.
But about the physical building of Nordland, I just vaguely can remember the old horse barns. They had horse barns west of church where I guess, it's before my time, but I guess that they drove wagons or buggies or sleighs or whatever, and then during church services they housed the horses in those barns. But of course by the time I was going to church regularly, everyone drove cars. But those barns were there for quite a while. I can just see them in my mind. But I don't even remember when they were torn down. But we also had wrought iron fence across the whole front of the church. Where the new elm and maple trees are now, there was a fence and a gate getting into the church. There was that black wrought iron gate.
Okay.
And that was there, well, probably after we were married even, probably in the late 40s, maybe. I don't know. I suppose Marlowe's Chestnuts has probably written down when all this was done.
Right.
Yeah, when the fence was taken out.
Yes.
But of course it's not there now.
Mm-hmm.
But and then of course all the different projects that we've had in Nordland, like building on the new entry. That was lately. Well, lately, when you say probably in the 50s, and of course our new fellowship hall.
Yes.
That's and I guess well, I remember the decorating too in the church. They had really. Did you ever see that when it was all fancy decorated up on the front?
No.
Well, they had all kinds, and then along the walls they had decorated. That must have. It was in my. I suppose in the 40s maybe.
What was that like?
Well, it was quite ornate. There must be a picture somewhere of it. That the place now where they hung the new banner with that Kathy and Doris did. There was a big. Oh, I can't describe it to you, but and along the wall too there was decorating.
Somebody painted?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was painted. They hired people to do it.
Oh. Right.
It was nice, and I wish I could remember exactly the year, but I think it was in the 40s that they did it.
And then that was all painted over.
Yeah.
And just a different group of people.
Well, there was, as in church meeting, there's always some people that want to do one thing and another group wants to do another thing. And when they took off the, what do you call the wood that's around the windows?
The molding?
Yeah, the molding. When they took that off, some people were really upset about that. They wanted, and now it's just flush. They have it. They don't have the wood.
No.
But when we had the Christmas program, our Christmas program. We started practicing in November, and that's we went through our piece. We had to learn our pieces, and we always had to learn one Norwegian song, which most of us had no clue what we were singing. We just sang the words. I remember a little bit of it yet, but it's just rote. And then we had no running water or bathrooms, so we had a water pail in the back, in the very back, with a water pail and a dipper. And kids were running back and forth, so you can imagine how any kind of flu spread, because we had the water pail and the dipper, and we practiced. And one thing I remember about Sunday school practice, the teachers were adamant that we had to be standing in by height, and they'd arrange us, and we'd be all arranged one Sunday, and the next Sunday somebody would be missing, so then they had to arrange us all over again. I don't know why they were so concerned about height, but they were just adamant about that. And
Who were some of your teachers?
well, I had Clara Bursame, Emma Christensen, one I had, Frances Lawrenson. Frances Lawrenson was also the organist, and she sat over on the west side. They had a pump organ, so her husband sat behind it, and he pumped it the whole time that she played. And she played for years and years and years until we got the new electric organ, and that was after the war. When I say the war, I'm talking about World War II. If there had been so many wars, you might think of another war.
Right.
But Frances and Alfred, and they also sang. They were quite musical. I think Alfred and Frances had the men's chorus too. Not sure. But
I'm just gonna.
it was kind of different to see that man sitting behind there and pumping that organ.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, we're going.
I could talk about every one of these, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll talk about, I'm going to mention the change in funerals. Well, way back, we always had funerals in church, and they had, the body would be up in the front. And then after the service, they marched around. Everybody marched around. Some people stopped in front of the casket and would cry, and the family was sitting right there, and it was just the custom of the day. That's the way it was done.
Open casket.
Open casket, and people marched at the very end. They marched around to say their last goodbyes. That's what it was. The intention was to say their last goodbyes. Mm-hmm. And when my father-in-law died in 1956, we didn't really like that practice, so we changed it. But it was in June, so it made it easier to do it. Everybody of the congregation walked outside, and then my father-in-law's casket was left in the entry. And then the family went out very last, and they shut the outside door, so we were in there with him alone, and said our goodbyes to him there. Mm. And after we did that, I think that was the last time. I don't think anybody ever walked around after that. But they used to have two services. They had the funeral at the house. They would say 1:30 at the house and 2 o'clock at church. And they would come to the homes, and the casket and the body would be in the living room of the home, and the pastor would have a prayer, and sometimes they would have a hymn, or sometimes a soloist. It would be a short service, which is kind of a goodbye for the deceased, for his or her home. And then they would get into the funeral procession. The pastor would drive first, I think, and then the hearse, and then the family would come by, and then people would drive slowly. You didn't drive fast, you drove slowly up to church. And then at 2 o'clock you had the regular church service. And I don't know if I don't remember them having lunch at church in olden days until later on we started serving, lunch afterwards. But those were some of the things that were a little bit different than we do it now.
Right.
But I guess customs evolve. We change from time to time, and that was one of the things I know when I was a little girl at home. We used to watch the funeral procession. If it went by our house, we counted the cars. And we wanted to see how many there were that came from the home to the church. And it was just a game we had, I guess. I guess I thought, well, maybe the more cars a person had, the more important the person was. I don't know. And I remember the flowers, I think they've taken the odor out of roses, because there used to be such an odor in church with flowers in those days. And I wonder what's different, but I can smell it yet. When I first started, I sang a lot of solos for funerals. And when I first started singing solos, there was those heavy odor. It didn't bother me, but I remember the heavy odor of the flowers from the funerals that I don't smell anymore. I think they've changed. The flowers are being bred a different way, something. But and I guess I don't think I can think of anything more about funerals. But I do remember this going around in the front, and I think it was very difficult for the family because they were right in back of where people were walking, and if they should stop and cry or something, then the family would. So that certainly has changed.
Yes.
Over the years.
And they were embalmed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. There was no. What am I thinking of? What they do now?
Cremate.
Cremate. Yeah. There was no cremation.
No.
That's quite recent. Quite recent. Not everybody is yet, but
right.
That's quite a recent custom, and I don't know who was I don't remember how long ago it was that the first one. Not too many years ago. I don't think. We did go to Bible camp. I think it's already been mentioned by somebody else that this was in the late 30s, and we didn't feel like nobody of the farm girls had enough money to stay in the dorm. I mean, that you had to pay. So we rented 2 years. I remember we rented a cabin down there. One was Herman Fisher's, and the little yellow cabin at the end. We were a whole bunch of farm girls, and Esther Jacobson was one of our group, and she was a little older, and she could probably cook and stuff. So we cooked for ourselves. We brought food from home, cooked for ourselves in our cabin, and then we went to all the sessions. They had different sessions in the morning and some musical things, but we stayed in those cabins because, like I say, we didn't feel like we could afford to stay in the dorm. But it was a fun time. We were at that time we were Lutheran Free Church. So we weren't as large a group as we are now. We didn't take up I know there were people from Montevideo there, but now it's the whole United States, So they sent pastors out from the seminary, and we had good teachers. I'm sure we could have learned a lot if we had listened.
Was there singing at camp too?
Oh yeah, lots of singing. I think Lutherans are always big on singing. That's their thing. They like, and I remember at night they would have a campfire in front of the dormitory, and then some people would go out on Lake Cronus in a boat, and then they'd have some antiphonal singing where we would sing, and then they would sing back to us, and like that, you know.
Nice.
And it was real fun for kids. We had a nice fire, and well, we did a few naughty things too, but I guess I better not talk about that. Building the Sunday school edition. That was really a couples club project. We came back from the war, or the men did, and everybody had so many kids. It was kids all over the place, you know. And when we used to have Sunday school, we had it right in the main church. We just sat in the pews, like 5 classes. I mean, you couldn't concentrate. It was terrible. And I think May Sealand was one of those that really worked for. Well, we all did, but May had the idea, and Audrey to an Adaine, I think. And then the couples club took it on as a project, kind of. And so we said we had to get. Well, some people said no. If we build onto the church, we'll just wreck the beautiful look of the church. We'll just spoil the look of the church. It won't look right. And we thought, well, educating our children was more important than what the church looked like, you know. So then we thought, well, how are we going to earn money? Well, Ivan Anderson was raising chickens at that time, and he had to have them loaded out. And so he hired the couples club to come and catch them. And I think we caught 25,000 each time. And you had to do it after dark. They had dark light, and the chickens would just sit kind of squat down. And us women would catch them. We caught 3 in each hand. We caught 6 chickens. And then the men would carry them to the truck. And we did that. I have some pictures someplace of that. We looked pretty raunchy by the time we got through. It was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, you know, before we got through. But, you know, I don't know how much we raised, but several. Well, we didn't get paid more than $75 for each time. That was
a piece?
No, for the whole thing, for $75. But we did it many times, so I suppose maybe I don't know. There must be a record someplace of what we left. But then I think finally people realized we were serious. The congregation realized we were serious. There was still some opposition, but I guess there always is. And so then people started donating money too. And so we got started, and then we have it now. It's still being used. It's needed a little updating from time to time, but it was really a wonderful edition.
Yes, that's quite a memory too.
Yeah, quite. Were you here?
No.
You weren't here then?
No.
Yeah, we'll never forget the catching chickens, that's for sure. I mean,
That is a
I don't
story.
know who I got to take care of the kids. My mother must have come over. Or maybe they were old enough maybe Kay was old enough to take care of them.
Did you have lunch then?
Yes,
at
we
1
had
o'clock
lunch.
in the morning?
We had lunch. I have some pictures of it. I don't know how we ate. We were so full of dust and chicken, I don't know, whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a memory I don't think anybody that's done it will ever forget. And we had a few people that helped us besides the couple club. There was a few that didn't belong to the couples club that came and helped. And I remember especially Reverend, no, not Reverend Larson, Reverend Hagan. And he would come and help us. He was kind of a tall man, and he said thank you. Every time I gave him a chicken, he said, thank you. And so he was so polite. And we were quite a group by the time the night was over. We looked pretty raunchy.
I suppose you didn't have to take out a loan for that edition.
I don't think we took out a loan, you know. I wonder if, I think Chester was treasurer of that project. But I don't think Nordland's ever taken out a loan
Okay.
that I recall.
That's good.
We must have had to take out a loan for something. I don't know, but usually if the congregation has felt there is a need, the money seems to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that'll continue. At one time in the church, I don't know if anybody has mentioned this, there was an old bachelor that had some land out in South Dakota. And he in his will, he left the land to the 3 churches in the area, to Nordland, to Zion, and to the mission. It was the mission church, and now it's evangelical free.
Mm-hmm.
But and for years, I think they just had to. Don't think they did anything with it, and they finally sold it because I think they were having to pay some taxes on it. So, and it was quite close to where the oil is now. But
Wow.
but I always wondered how close. You know, I don't really know. But
So he grew up in the area?
he grew up in the area. I don't even know what church he belonged to, if he went to church at all. But he was a bachelor,
Mm-hmm.
and he left his land to the 3 churches, which was a nice thing to do, I think.
Yes.
Well, I can't think of anything else. Luther League, I could mention that we didn't have church every Sunday. We were a double parish with New London. And so we had church, they had church in the morning, and then, I don't know if it was every other week, I think we had church at night. The young people's service. And the pastor gave the sermon at night. But I think it was the late 50s before we had a pastor where we had this own service every Sunday.
Oh,
Otherwise it was Sunday night.
okay.
And the young people of the day had a fundraiser, and they put in an electric light plant. It was a gas engine. I can hear it yet. It goes pop, 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 pop. And that put up lights, because there was no REA. The REA didn't come through until about, at our home we got it in 1937.
Okay.
So in the early 30s, they had this gas engine that provided lights.
Wow.
You remember that?
No.
I mean, in your church? Or,
Oh yeah, I've heard the story.
Mhm.
Yes.
And that was pretty modern, to, get electric lights. I don't know what they did before. I guess there was lamps hanging around,
Yes.
but I don't remember that. That was before my day. I've seen pictures of it. And at the Luther League, it was a real good forum for young people. They had a program. They had lots of children, not children, anybody could give a reading, or if you took piano lessons, you probably practiced your first songs at Luther League.
Okay.
You had a program, and hymns, of course, and the pastor would give a devotion. And that's the way it was. Not as formal as the Sunday morning service. It was quite informal.
Yes.
But it was such a good forum for young people to practice like their piano lessons. They got to, and everybody clapped for them. And I don't remember. Did we have lunch?
You must have had lunch.
You must have had lunch?
Must have had
lunch. Yeah, I guess maybe we did. I know we had New Year's Eve lunch. And like Kathy mentioned, that they had cream chicken on mashed potatoes, or mostly mashed potatoes. And then we had a big dinner. We had a program first. It started at 8 o'clock. In those days, they started at 8 because all the farmers milked cows. It all started at 8. They had about an hour program from 8 to 9, and then at 9 o'clock we go down and have a big supper. I mean, the cream chicken and mashed potatoes and the vegetable, and I remember Jell-O, always Jell-O. And then kind of a fellowship hour. And then at 11:30, we always went back up to the main service and had a couple of hymns, and the pastor maybe said something. And then at 12 o'clock sharp, they would ring the bell. They'd ring out the old year and ring in the new. And I remember one year, I think it was when Pastor Ashbrook was here. It was bitterly cold, like in the 24 below zero. And he said he thought it was dangerous to stay there so long. So we kind of had the ringing in the new year early, because he said it was dangerous for people to be out on the road. And so that year we had a little bit early New Year.
Is that the year you stopped doing it, do you think?
No, we stopped doing it about in the late 70s, I think. The young people, the younger people wanted to have their own parties. They wanted their own New Year's party at home. They didn't want to come to church anymore. And it kind of died down slowly, and finally there was just not enough people to carry on. So we haven't had it for, have you had it since you were here?
Yes, I remember going to one, for sure, one.
Okay.
Vince and I. Yeah.
Was it the late 70s?
Yeah, it would have been mid to late 70s, yeah.
Yeah. In my memory, I think it was late 70s that we, but it was carried on for many, many years. It was a big, big deal. New Year's Eve and the fest and the lutefisk supper, they were the things that we looked forward to. And the fest, I laugh about that nowadays. The fest, I remember we always got new shoes for the fest.
Really?
White shoes, and that was a mistake because it was all dusty, dusty down at the park, and I was kind of a goofy kid. I'd run down the hill, and my shoes would get all dusty. And nowadays they wear sandals, I suppose, or
sure.
Yeah, but no, you dressed up for the fest.
So you wore a dress to the fest?
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah, you always were.
wow.
Wore dresses all over. We wore dresses to school. If you wore slacks in the winter, if it was very cold, you might wear slacks, but you had to take them off and hang them in the cloakroom. You had to wear a dress. Now that was a big change in the way people dress in church.
Yes.
And we always, my kids, we wore our best. We wore our best things to church.
What about hats?
Oh yes, yeah, especially I wore a hat until I started singing choir. And then when you sing in choir, you really can't wear a hat. So that took care of that. But for my daughters, always had hats at Easter, and I'd sewed new dresses for them, Yeah, and the boys would wear ties and suits or jackets. That's completely different now.
Yes.
Yeah, you wore your best to church, and the men all wore suits. All wore suits.
Even
No.
in the summer? Hot
Oh
summer
yeah,
day?
I think so. Yeah, I think even the pastor wore his robe in summer. I don't remember, who was the first pastor that didn't wear a robe in summer? I know Reverend Larson was very formal. He didn't want anybody behind the altar ring even to help with communion. That was kind of a holy of holy place to him. But now I think it's so much better now because the young people, the kids get to take part,
Right.
and they feel included. Where I can't say that I really felt included. I was afraid of the pastor. And we had, well, I did not goof off, but I mean, some young kids did, you know. We knew we couldn't do that.
All right.
Well, my memories of the Mission Fest are that my parents, I know, one year were on the committee to go around to the farmers the night before to collect cream and eggs. And then those items were brought to the community park the next morning and mixed up. And then I can hear the gasoline engine. They had electric, wasn't electric, gasoline engine that made the ice cream, that had a pulley on it and that churned the ice cream. I can just hear it in my ears yet, that pop, 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 that they made their own ice cream down at the park. It was delicious, really good.
But you were a child.
I was a child.
So you
Yeah.
didn't have to do
I
that
was,
work. But
I was a child, and the Mission Fest was always on a Wednesday when I grew up. They had it on a Wednesday, and then a lot of the people from town, the workers, would come out. And sometimes later, I know when I was on the committee, we had a special table for the people that came from town, because at that time we had waitresses. The waitresses waited on people. Now we have a cafeteria, so you help yourself.
Yes.
But we used to have a special table because we didn't want the people to have to wait. We knew that if they had to wait, they wouldn't stay. So we had a special table for the town people. And I'm not sure when we changed from Wednesday to Saturday, but I suppose it was when the women went to work. The women went to work, and then there wasn't anybody to work, and it just seemed to work better, I guess, to have it on Saturday. Got more people to come and visit. And back in olden days, we always had people from the cities that came, the women from the cities, and they were always so dressed up and looked so fashionable, you know, compared to what we thought us old farmers looked like. But we looked forward to having them because it was nice of them to come.
and they'd spend the whole day.
Oh yeah, got there and had dinner. Well, they used to have a program in the auditorium, a religious program, like a missionary or somebody visiting. But then they thought, well, that was kind of, all the women were in the kitchen, nobody could listen to it, so it would just be a few of the old people that were up in the auditorium listening to the speaker. So I don't know what they stopped that, but that was in my day. They stopped having speakers, and then they just go for dinner, and then they have a Mission Sunday. That's not too long ago. They have a Mission Sunday in church
The next Sunday.
instead of having a speaker down at the park. But of course, as a kid, that was the one big thing of the whole year, just like Christmas. Christmas, and you looked forward to the fest. And I remember my grandmother giving me a quarter to spend because it went for missions. And she was very mission-minded, so I got a quarter. But I suppose for a quarter, I could probably get, pop was probably more than a nickel or a dime, and ice cream. You know, I could get quite a bit to eat on a quarter in those days. Yeah, that was a big deal at the fest. But I remember when I got old enough to be a waitress, it was kind of scary because I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing, and I don't think anybody ever trained us. I think we just started working, and but I guess we made it through.
Right. What do you remember about the auction?
I remember about the auction was the auditorium, and we always had big baskets of peonies up on the stage. The stage is different than it is now. It was stage was on the north end, and I always think of peonies. When I think of the fest, I think of peonies. And I don't remember much about the auction, except I remember the first year that I had to help with the recording of the things, and that was scary because I hadn't ever done it before. You had to write down what was purchased and the price it was purchased. And I don't think it was the person that brought it or bought it. Maybe it was. Yeah, it probably was. That's what I remember about that. And I've been on the committee many times, on the food committee. Mm-hmm. That was fun because you were on with some of your friends and you had to plan. I remember the year I was on the food committee. We used to have a food committee that served for a whole year. And in the year of the 100th anniversary of Nordland, I was on the food committee with Mabel Thompson, Violet Hagen, and Phyllis Anderson. And in those days, the food committee served for a whole year. So we had quite a few weddings we had served at, and several funerals. And then we had the anniversary of the church. We had Friday night, we had something. And then Saturday was something all day. And then on Sunday was the big deal. Mm-hmm. And on Sunday, when we had the big deal, we got all the food ready, but we asked Zion ladies to serve for us so we could be up at the services. And we just got through with the 100th anniversary, then we had to send out slips for the fest. Oh. In those days, you had to send out individual slips. I don't know how we didn't mail them, maybe we did. We didn't have a mailbox. So, and then I'd like to see that book again. I don't know how many things we served at that one year, just the four of us. We're in charge, I mean everybody served. Mm-hmm. But I think after that, or shortly after that, we went to, for a while it was circles. Mm-hmm. We had circles served for different things. And then now, of course, it's by the month. So that has evolved a lot with the serving. But it's always been fun. I've always enjoyed working in the kitchen, and I haven't done it for a while because I'm too old now. But I bring stuff. Mm-hmm. If there's a funeral or something, I can call them up and say, I'll bring a cake, mm-hmm. or whatever. But yeah, that's my memory of that.
How was it working in the old kitchen in the basement? Is that kind of crowded? Or?
Well, I don't know. We did it. It's hard. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And when they had the lutefisk supper, they cooked all the lutefisk back in the old furnace room. They had gas stoves put up. And I remember mashing potatoes in the old shed that was out there. We cooked, and I look back on it and I think, how did we do it? No running water. No, and we served at the lutefisk supper. We served 1,000 people. But most of that was done before. See, we haven't had the lutefisk supper since the late '60s. Uh-huh. So a lot of that was before I was really involved a lot. Mm-hmm. But I worked. I always worked. But I was on the committee too. That's right. The first year, we were three newly married women. Must have been the late 40s. I know it was Edna Olson and Viola Nelson and myself, and then Ann Chestnut. Ann Chestnut was the old one. I wonder how she put up with us. But she was a good teacher, so I guess we did it.
You learned.
Yeah.
Learned your lessons.
We learned our lesson well. Yeah, I don't know how we put on those dinners. People would wait for lutefisk for several hours. I don't know if they're that patient now anymore, but they'd come and buy tickets and they just had to wait their turn. Wow. We didn't have very much room downstairs, mm-hmm. But we did it, mm-hmm. and people came. I guess if you're a lutefisk lover, you'll wait for hours.
I guess. Yes, that's right.
Well, I think that's about it. I really should have sat down and made an outline before I did this. But maybe it's better to be spontaneous.
I mean, you had kind of something to go on.
Do you drink coffee, or do you want some root beer or Sprite?
I would have a cup of coffee. Do you have some made?
All I do is push the button.
Yeah, I would.
It's Sanka though. I have to drink Sanka because my blood pressure.